Hello, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We just look back at what we've seen so far in the month of April. Let's start off with temperatures here. This map shows you the average temperature ranks by climate district. And it's really telling on what the jet stream's been doing, which has largely been coming in out of the Gulf of Alaska and then coming right over the mountains, dipping into troughs here that eventually come out toward the northeast. And as a result of that, we've been able to bring in quite a bit of colder air. Now, the opposite of this, if you just think about the Pacific jet stream behavior, would be to get the jet stream to come out of the southwest. And if that was the case, not only would we have been very wet in the southwest for spring, but it would have been extremely wet where we have drought right now. And we've been quite mild. We would have been quite mild over here in the southeast. So jet stream trajectory in early spring is key to picking up on what we should expect going forward and where we've been. And in a nutshell, this has really just shut a lot of things down so far this year. And on top of all the very cold weather that we've seen here, we've had two big blizzards that have hit western Montana and North Dakota, hitting the spring wheat pretty hard, and at least the planting progress of it. And then we've also just seen such a large area throughout the Corn Belt not been able to get really going this year because of either wet weather or very, very cold weather. Now, come over here to North Carolina, and you can see that we've sit just a bit on the cooler side of average. We have had some warmer days. We picked up some heat. But one of the big questions I'm getting asked a lot right now is there still a possibility of a late frost coming? So we're going to address all of that in just a few moments here. On the precipitation side of things, the other consequence of having a system or systems that come into the northwest, besides really bringing up the precipitation totals here, instead of dipping down to the Four Corner states, they tend to eject farther to the north. And as a result, we get a large, what we call dry slot in each one of these systems, which is why since the beginning of April, we've seen the drought getting worse from Arizona to New Mexico to Colorado, and then the entirety here of the Central Plains. Even though this past weekend on Friday, we saw a bunch of severe weather in this area, including some massive storms producing hail. Behind it were very, very strong winds drying the ground out almost immediately. And of course, we saw just a huge dust storm in this particular area. By the way, speaking of dust storms, I want to show you something real quick. I'm going to take you over and let's look at some satellite data here. So instead of coming out of Texas, let's go on a global scale. I'd like to go look across the Atlantic. And yeah, this morning, this was kind of interesting. Let's get this catch up here. This was last night. There it is, sunrise. Some of this is sun glint, but there's also quite a bit of dust coming off of the Sahara right now. And I'm just going to watch this carefully because that's an important, that's a really important factor to be paying attention to as we go into the hurricane season. I know it's approaching and we don't want to talk about it just yet, but seeing such strong winds coming off the Sahel, which is right in through here, and blowing that dust out from the southern Sahara and desert just has me concerned. Just something I'm going to be watching as we go forward. But let's come back to this precipitation map. Now, when we think about what's going on here, we want to also assess drought because the plains have just been split. I mean, North Dakota, wettest April on record so far, coming to parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, this area, Colorado. We're seeing dryness that would rival some of the driest time periods during the drought of the 1930s. So, I mean, that's just it. This data goes back 130 years. So we're keeping an eye on all of this. But the latest drought monitor looks like this. And we've not seen major correction on this through spring. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Go to the change maps, and let's just look back over the last, we can look over the last 4 weeks just as an example. We continue to see class degradation in this area. There's been major improvement in the lower Mississippi River Valley. And over the last month, there has been one area right here in North Carolina that has seen drier conditions overall. So we look at all of this, and the first question is, what does that long-range outlook look like? So I'm going to discuss that with you first today. So first thing I want to do is I want to go to the CPC website because last week, at the end of last week, on the 21st, they updated their seasonal outlooks. This is their spring seasonal outlook for the month of May, I should say. And they've got North Carolina with above average precip and a lot of dryness still spreading throughout the plains. You can see they also have that same area with much above average temperatures, which means high evaporation rates, stronger winds likely coming off the mountains and out of the Great Basin and the desert, which means the drought will likely worsen here. There's some issues here with quite a bit of colder air coming through much of the Corn Belt into the eastern Great Lakes. And we have questions about how far to the east this dryness actually goes. Probably a better estimate would be to cut this off somewhere in this area, just based upon my analysis. Again, National Weather Service is a group of phenomenal forecasters. I'm just making an adjustment based on what I see. If we come out to their 3-month outlook, this is now what we're seeing. Once again, they keep a large section here from the eastern Corn Belt and the Ohio Valley over toward Virginia, Pennsylvania, with above average precip. They've got equal chances for us in North Carolina, but wetter the farther north you go. But if you notice, they continue with the drought situation in the Central Plains and stretch it back here into the Pacific Northwest. They also have us warmer for May, June, and July. Now, when we look at all of this, I just want to take you to another part of this. You can come up here and click on the word 3-month outlook, and you actually get to see their probabilistic forecasts. So if we just look at June, July, August in terms of precip, this is kind of one of their updates they just did at the end of the week, really giving quite a bit of confidence to very dry conditions here in the midsection of the country. And this is where this gets important for us. So what's going on here is they're expecting, basically surface high pressure to develop here, jet stream ridging to happen right across, the Rocky Mountains. Therefore, on one side, there's an active southwest monsoon. On the other side, where there's this ridge, we block all the moisture. But this also likely means that the subtropical high, way over here, will be positioned squarely on top of Bermuda. And what that does is that tends to just feed what could be an active hurricane season, directly into the Gulf Coast or the East Coast. So that's what, this setup points to. And I just want to make a point here that I don't have a long-range model right now that is forecasting hot and dry summer for the Carolinas. It's just not a single one is doing it. And some of the reasons for that are what the ocean temperatures are doing right now. So if we look a year ago in April, we had already seen the fading of La Nina. This year, it continues to be quite strong. And there's still the same patch of cold water here in the Gulf of Alaska and off the West Coast. See, it was there last year too. Now, last year through the month of May, this all warmed up in a big way. And that changed the pattern such that we brought a big area of high pressure back toward the north and west. We wonder if that's going to happen again this year. Because right now, the Southern Oscillation Index is way up here, almost at a value of 18. And what this is this tells me if the atmosphere is behaving in what we would call base state La Nina. Now, what that means is if the values of the Southern Oscillation Index, which is a measure of the pressure difference between Tahiti and Darwin, so Tahiti out in the middle of the Pacific, Darwin in northern Australia, if it's above a value of 7, that means the atmosphere is, based on the trade wind behavior, in base state La Nina. Now, we need to take that and do something with it. What does that mean from a meteorological perspective? It means this. Historically, in April and May, we've correlated the Southern Oscillation Index with precipitation. So these are the positive correlations, meaning wetter, and these would be the negative correlations, meaning drier. Our Southern Oscillation Index is positive. So what do you see? This area inside of that line is where we're expecting drier conditions. We're wetter here, 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 and here. You see that? So when I show you all of this, and we just remember that for the last, since the equinox, we've had that strong jet stream that's come in, came over the mountains and then enhanced that rain shadow. The systems like to pull east. They drag fronts through us in the Carolinas. We tend to be wetter. So that's why when we look out there, we say, wow, through May 5th, I still see the extent of that Pacific jet coming over the mountains with the nose of a weaker subtropical jet meeting it here. All three of these things point to more activity east and drier in the plains. And that's why the latest updates from the long-range European model, which from May 1st to June 1st, do the same thing. See where it's wetter? We're wetter here too. So the likelihood of May drought development or anything of that nature is low across the Carolinas. It's actually low for the eastern half of the country. The likelihood of drought continuing in this area is high. And that's going to be the main story, I think, for the whole of the United States going in to the springtime period. Now, from there, let's just go look at what we've seen over the last 7 days. Remember, a lot of this precipitation was early last week, right? But we've had very wet weather, and we're continuing to get it here in the Mid-South. The northern plains have been absolutely hammered with rain here and heavy snows on the backside. Second blizzard has hit this area. California picked up some precip out of this. But over the last 3 days, of course, we've had high pressure dominate our area, and the temperatures have warmed, and we had a much better finish to the week. But there is a front moving across the country. If you just look here, here's the temperature change between this morning and yesterday on Sunday. And that front, as it slowly creeps, the question I'm going to ask about it, is it going to maintain its strength? Because as it came over where I live, which is right inside of that circle, in fact, I live right here, we had 3 inches of rain yesterday. I mean, it was just an absolute downpour. Well, the front's fallen apart. Here's our winds. Let's let that reset. There we go. Can you kind of see how there's, generally speaking, high pressure here? The front is north, it kind of stretches back that way, but it no longer has the sharp gradient because that low has just started to fall apart. It's now just sitting and curling up here over the Hudson Bay. So what this means is, as this front tries to come through, I'm going to be watching out for Tuesday evening for the risk of some stronger storms in this area. Let me take you back and show what I mean. So here we go. We're going to go back in time to Monday morning. There's where the front currently sits, soaking parts of the Mid-South and the Eastern Corn Belt. Moves towards us very slowly through Monday night. By the time we get into Tuesday morning, afternoon, and evening, that's when I think we're going to have our best chance at seeing some thunderstorm activity across the eastern part of the state. Now, some of these storms, like I said, could be strong to severe and put down some pretty heavy, locally heavy rain, and that front clears. Now, behind it, we'll talk about the temperatures in a few moments, but we're going to get a break after this. But the Storm Prediction Center does have a marginal risk out for this part of North Carolina, Virginia. This is for tomorrow on Tuesday, so we need to keep an eye on that. So when's the next chance of rain after that? Well, we're going to go to the European model to get that question answered. Let's blow that up one more time. There we go. So we've already seen through Wednesday. So there's the chance of storms on Tuesday night. Front clears out. This is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Do you notice what's happening here? The atmosphere is resetting west. It's coming back here, and the next system came over the mountains, cutting into here, and now the low emerges in this area. So we're going to get several days without seeing much more precipitation for us in North Carolina. But this system next weekend blows up, could bring more severe weather into this region. We've been way above average this year. Possibly more snow on the back side of it. Let's make that circle a little bit smaller, right in through there. This is another kind of showstopper for the Midwest on doing planting. Just too much rain. Same thing for the Mid-South. And that front tries to move toward us late next weekend, early next week. But how much rain do we get out of all of this? Well, let's just kind of zoom in and have a look. So this is what's approaching Tuesday. Generally speaking, because the European model resolution is too low, we won't be able to pick up on the total amounts from some of these storms. So don't look at this and say, wow, I'm only seeing 0.2, 0.3 inches. We could get more in local areas from some of those storms. But as we go through Thursday, Friday, you notice we're not adding anything after Tuesday. The next addition comes late in the weekend, right there, into Monday. And again, it's going to be scattered at best. So overall, we would look at this next week to 10 days, and we end up getting a picture like this. Notice that we're near normal, possibly some of those thunderstorms packing in a little bit of extra rainfall. But with the next system emerging, the big question will be, how large is the dry slot? If I had to redraw it, I would say that this whole area in Nebraska, which is having some of its driest conditions since the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, okay, is too wet in the forecast. So that means issues across the Corn Belt, the winter wheat belt, the spring wheat belt with too much precipitation, including snow, is going to continue. So let's keep that broader perspective about this as we go forward. What about once we get out there to day 10? It's amazing. Day 10 is Cinco de Mayo, so that's how far out we are. Again, strong jet stream pattern here, trough digging in. The pattern continues to move. So watch what this trough does. It sweeps in here to the northwest. The flow jumps up into a ridge in the midsection of the country. We get another trough in this area. So that tends to mean, because we know that troughs are associated with wetter weather, inclement weather, even cooler weather, that going into the first week of May, we need to be on the lookout for some, wetter conditions overall. But by the end of the run, I'll be very curious to see if the jet stream pattern goes back into this configuration by about May 10th. That would open up a bunch of warmth for us, but also open up the midsection of the country for more precipitation. So when we look out there fully at week 2, as that trough develops, that's why we see above average precipitation. It's not much above average, but it's saying that the likelihood of being drier through early May is limited. Now, I told you earlier we talk about frost, so let's go have a look here. Over the next 7 days, this is what the National Digital Forecast Database is calling for frost risk, and we can see that much of North Carolina is not in that risk, but the eastern Corn Belt, back through, all the way down here to the Panhandles is. Now, thinking about this, I made a quick map this morning. These are just weather stations across North Carolina, government weather stations at larger cities. There's a number over every one of them, and that number says, from today forward, how many times in the last 40 years was there a frost after today? Got it? So most of the zeros means we didn't have any frost after today. There's a couple places like a little bit higher elevation here where there were 3 times. Back in the mountains, of course, much more prevalent. Now, just to show you this, I'll take you to Greensboro here. And what you see here in Greensboro is actually today, the 25th, or the 24th, yesterday, was the last time, or the latest frost, in the last 40 years. So we're going to move out of that. Our frost risk is really, really decreasing. And that's important to share with you because as we look over the next 15 days at temperatures, we're going to see some cooler weather, but I am not concerned about a late frost. So here's Monday's highs compared to normal, so hot. But that front's advancing. So as we play it, there we go. There's Tuesday, Wednesday, it's over us. So we're going to see about a 10 to 12 degree drop in temperatures because of that. Still highs around 70. The plains heat back up, further worsening the drought situation here. This is now getting into, let's go up Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you notice toward the end of the week, the temperature split seems to be right about there. Cooler to the north, warmer to the south. And that's important to show you because as we go out there, day 5 through 10, that seems to be the setup. That's day 5 through 10, and this is day 10 through 15. We've seen some major moderation in the temperatures out there. So I do feel as though most of North Carolina is out of the woods for a very, very odd and rare but late frost event. I don't think it's going to happen this year. Eastern Corn Belt, not the same case, but North Carolina will be on the lookout for that. All right, where I'd like to finish up with you all is I want to talk a bit about South America. The safrinha crop has gone under some dry conditions, and it's finishing dry. Why? Blame it on La Nina. La Nina's keeping the MJO in the Indian Ocean, preventing good rising motion over South America. Those two things are correlated. The wettest weather's way down south down here, okay? Sorry, let's draw that again. Way down south down here. So this crop is finishing under drier conditions, which means some of the later season or later planted safrinha crop is not going to have a good strong finish to it. We're going to limit the top end of this. We've even seen, using some other satellite data, this is from Grace, that there's been a big section of Brazil that over the last month or so has seen significant drying, and that hits a big part of the safrinha corn crop especially. And we're going to have to see how this plays out because some of the numbers were quite high coming from USDA and CONAB. They might adjust those down once we see what the weather's impact has been on this crop. So we covered a lot today, but these are the things I want to keep you up to date with and hope you all keep an eye on. I'll talk to you again next Monday. Thank you.